Hi, my name is Matteo and we are going to watch today a small clip of Sylvester Stallone into one of the Rocky movies, and I do not think, having seen many interviews of him, that he is even acting in that scene. I think it is just him in a general way, seeing how he's talking with his daughters, for example. I think it is just the way he's interacting with people in general. He's the kind of man who is receiving a lot of respect from people around him, and he's able to solve conflicts. That is what we're going to break down in this video. How can you start developing those skills by yourself? This specific clip you are going to watch, this thing had a massive impact on myself when I saw it the first time like 10 years ago. I was going through a very dark phase and this really lifted me up in the same way he is lifting up his own son in the movie, and it had a tremendous impact on my life, just that clip alone. And we're going to break down how can you use those language skills yourself to either lift people up too in your own life, or when you want to defend yourself against negativity or people who want to drag you down all day long.
So you nervous about the fight?
They're scared to death.
You don't look scared?
Well, you ain't supposed to.
Then you don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, I think I do.
You know, living with you, it hasn't been easy. People see me, but they think of you. Now with all this going on, this is gonna be worse than ever.
It don't have to be.
No, sure it does.
Why? You got a lot going on, kid.
Oh, what, my last name? That's the reason I got a decent job. That's the reason why people deal with me in the first place. Now I start to get a little ahead. I start to get a little something for myself, and this happens.
If you haven't seen the movie, you know it is about him wanting to go back inside the ring and fighting, and his son does not, because his son feels like he has been living in the shadow of his father his whole life. But this is not the point. The idea here is to notice how much miscommunication there is in the beginning, and that is the reason of most conflicts in life, probably including the ones you've had yourself in your life. When people just miscommunicate because they are attributing to each other characteristics that are only based on their own feelings. His son is being angry about many things and he's projecting that anger on his father, which is never really leading to anything good. And he's only starting to get at the root of what he really wants to say when the anger has been building up too much and he's starting to explode. So a first thing to elaborate here is, whenever you have a tension, a conflict, solve it on yourself on your own first, and then you can discuss it with the person involved. If you try right away to bark at somebody, it will never really, unless you have a really talented communicator in front of you like Sylvester Stallone, you will never get anything good out of it, because anger usually causes nothing else than more anger on the other side.
Now I'm asking you as a favor not to go through with this, okay? This is only gonna end up bad for you, and it's gonna end up bad for me.
You think I'm hurting you?
Yeah, in a way you are.
It's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
I know that's not what you want to do, but that's just the way that it is. Don't you care what people think? Doesn't it bother you that people are making you out to be a joke and that I'm gonna be included in that? Do you think that's right? Do you?
And what you can see here is what I keep emphasizing in my courses, and I still see people making the same mistake. When you have an assumption on what the person is trying to get out of you, or what the person is imposing on you, question the assumption first. Right here you can see Stallone saying, oh, so you think I'm gonna hurt you? It is the last thing I want. This is about something we know in the sleight of mouth model as the intention pattern. Question the intention of the person attacking you, because many times you are even wrong. Sometimes you think somebody is trying to attack you, and actually they are just dealing with their own wounds, their own internal pain and emotional conflicts, as it is the case here in this clip. And you may not even be involved as much as you think. You are part of the problem, but you may not even be the problem compared to what the person is trying to project on you, even unconsciously. So first of all, questioning the intention of the person in front of you is of massive value when you want to solve a conflict and communicate like a real leader, somebody who is taking charge instead of just blowing up on people and trying to drag them down all day long. When you really take charge, you question why people do what they do. And when on the other side, they presuppose you are trying to destroy them, maybe some people think your behavior is toxic, whereas in the end you never intended to break them or to cause them any harm. But the way you are behaving may be interpreted that way by people around you. It can happen sometimes, in which case, question. You think I want to do this? It was never my intention, and I think you wanted to do that. Is it your intention? No. So where is the conflict? If none of us wanted to harm each other, and then we can get at the root of the problem, which is what's going to happen in the remaining of this sequence.
You ain't gonna believe this. But you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did.
One very slight thing I would like to point out here, which is not drastically important, but still to take into consideration, is the kind of shaking Sly is having at some point in the beginning. This is what you can see in the animal kingdom when animals are being barked or yelled at by other animals. They usually shake like this to just unload all the frustration or maybe all the fear. When somebody is projecting a lot of negative energy against you, at you, even if you're stoic and you don't show anything, deep down you are a human being, you feel things, okay? Trying to pretend you're tough and don't feel anything, it is just going to break at some other point later. Whereas somebody who is flexible, it is a metaphor and a physical thing here, both at the same time. Somebody who is flexible and can shake off any negative energy, this is going to be easier to react if you can shake it off more easily. You can do it physically like he does here. If you are in a real conversation, it might be tricky to do that for real, but even inside your own head, think about okay, calm down first and then answer. Your answers will be so much more clever and so much more targeted for finding a resolution to the conflict than if you're just grasping all the anger, taking it, staying strong, and then barking back. This will just end into a fight, which is what happens into most people's lives all day long. Whereas if you shake it off, either metaphorically inside your head or literally physically like he does here for a split second, you will be much more able to react accordingly without letting emotions get ahead. Of course, you use emotions to fuel what you want to say, but when emotions get ahead, you just lose any kind of intelligent communication with the person in front of you. And the other thing is obviously when starting a story, which we could define as the metaphor pattern in the sleight of mouth chart, but even without going into very advanced things, just starting a story obviously is kind of shutting down the defenses, the anger of the person, because when you start a story, everybody's brain, including yours and mine, so we are all pretty much dumb at this point, our conscious mind is just focused on what is the end of the story, where does he want to go? And that is an automated mechanism, there is nothing much we can do about it. When somebody starts a story, we at least want to see what is the middle point of the story. We just want intuitively to know what is the leading, where is he leading that. So it is a great way to redirect aggressivity and anger because at least you're calming down their mind when you start telling a story. And on top of that, he's starting a story here by positive facts. I told your mom you would be the greatest kid in the world, stuff like that. It is pretty hard to disagree with somebody who is saying positive things about yourself, isn't it? So when somebody starts saying things like that, obviously you are starting to lower a bit your level of aggressivity and listen more carefully. Like, okay, I just want to unload my anger, but what is he going to say? I'm still going to listen. That is kind of the level here. He is kind of decreasing the level of aggressivity of his son just by doing that. It is probably not something conscious, but he has just been, I guess, Sly has just been into so many conflicts into his life that it just became automatic at this point. And it is already starting to lower the level of aggressivity of his son.
But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that and that ain't you. You're better than that.
One first extremely important behavior here that is pretty tough if you're not an advanced communicator is to shift the tone of voice. He's getting more aggressive himself, and he's basically pacing the level of aggressivity his son was coming up with, which can be a difficult thing to do if you're not advanced yet, because it is about matching the emotional level of the person in front of you without redirecting it at him. So he's matching the level of anger, but at the same time lifting him up by telling him positive things, which can be pretty tricky to do. But I noticed that when I was in sales years ago, every time a client was extremely upset because there was a package that could not be transported, it was some VAT shit back in the day, whatever, but I was quite often matching the level of anger with, oh, those people again, they have done that, we're going to show them. But I was never attacking the person in front of me. I was redirecting the anger to other people in the situation who were not physically there. So I was appeasing the person in front of me by matching the level of anger. And then from there we could lead into something more positive, a resolution for the conflict at hand. But what most people do in those situations, they just yell back at each other, like attacking back each other, and it is leading nowhere. If you want to match the level of aggressivity of somebody, you can do it. Just make sure you redirect the target of that aggressivity to something else, or use it to lift the person up. That way you're just causing some sort of pattern interrupt. You're interrupting their trail of thoughts by matching what they are doing. So they have a mirror of what they have been projecting on you. Now they have a mirror of that and they see how much damage it is by acting like this. But you're doing it by lifting them up. If you do it the way he does in this clip, you're lifting them up instead of just attacking to try to destroy them, which in the end is just a proof that you are wounded inside. If you try to destroy people, you are just the wounded one, and it is never leading to anything good. From a more advanced linguistic perspective, we can notice what he says here can be called a changing of the frame size in the sleight of mouth chart, which means he is implying that it is not him that beat up his son, or that it is not the fame of Stallone that beat up his son, it is just life. He says life is gonna beat you up anyway. Even if I was not there, even if I was not your dad, life would beat you up anyway. This is what life does to anybody that you have met so far. Anybody is like that. So from there you have two choices. You can just blame others all the time, or you can take responsibility because you're not a coward and do what you gotta do, whatever, which can be called then a consequence pattern. What are you going to do out of this? What are you going to do from there, instead of staying into the blame of whose fault it is? It is your fault because you didn't do that, because you do it. Yeah, but what about what you can do instead of blaming others? This is a consequence pattern. So starting from a changing of the frame size, it is not just me, it is life in general, enlarging the size to a consequence pattern. From there, okay, it's fucked up anyway. What can you do about this instead of blaming others? So he's commenting on the behavior his son has and explaining what negative consequence this behavior will lead to if he does not change.
I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life. Don't forget to visit your mother.
And the lack of response here of his son is demonstrating this pattern interrupt. It just shut him up, and in a good way. It's not like somebody had to prove each other wrong because of ego. It is more like an uplifting situation, which is what I'm much more interested in breaking down. Situations where people are uplifting each other instead of just trying to destroy each other, which is just coming to who has the longest whatever. It's just leading nowhere. So situations where people are lifting each other up is, I think, something more interesting to break down and to analyze and see what you can learn from that. When somebody is stopping to react like this with a a blank face or like a more relaxed face but like confused, it is a pretty good sign because it means that person is probably processing what you have just said. A blank in a conversation can be a really good thing. It can mean you have just said something really impactful and now the person is processing. It might not be good if you're just trying to destroy somebody and they shut down, then you might just be a bully and you have been shutting down somebody in a negative way. But when you say something impactful because you want to uplift the person in front of you and the person just goes blank or like, oh, I don't know, then probably you have made a pretty positive impact. So those things are pretty interesting behaviors to measure in a conversation. Are you getting those responses or are you just getting people trying to attack you back? In which case, what did you do exactly to get them so upset? Because maybe you have done something wrong if people keep trying to bark at you non-stop. Always aim for a positive outcome. It will bring you much more joy in your conversations than if you're trying to beat others just out of ego.